And now we will be listening about geopolitics and digital spaces. I'd like now to invite Mr. Slobodan Marković from UNDP to be the moderator of this panel and to join me at the scene. So please, could you announce and explain the topic and invite our speakers? Of course. So I would like to invite all the panelists, and then we will be able to move on. All right, then. Good day. Welcome to the Serbian IGF Forum, and welcome to the session that will be initiated after the mass murders committed in Belgrade and the series of tragic events. After these events, we witnessed the invitation from the media coming from the top-level positions that we should disconnect from social networks, that we should engage in censorship of certain contents. And this is why the topic of the internet content control is a good basis for the discussion, because we should know how a global digital space shapes up a large number of different stakeholders on the local and on the global level. We talk about technical level, political and social. We will be talking about that with Vladimir Radunović from the Diplo Foundation, with Željka Milošević from the Internet Society of Serbia, from the Belgrade branch of this organization, Danko Jevtović, Vice President of the ICANN Board of Directors. This is the Internet Corporation for Assigned Names and Numbers. We could perhaps start with Vlada. Is what we're listening to in our media something that can only be heard here? Well, okay, let's start from the motive, which is really very specific for us. But the idea to deal with the problem by eliminating the internet contents is nothing new. We see authoritarian countries that actually think in that way. I see two reasons for that. The first one is bad intention, and the second one is insufficient knowledge, and sometimes it's the combination of both. If you look into the possibility of censoring the internet contents, you don't have the possibility to filter some contents from Facebook and from TikTok and say, okay, this is something very violent. You can only filter the entire service, like Facebook or TikTok, which some countries did, but at the same time you exclude also what's good. Secondly, how to evaluate these contents? Who would be the one in charge of assessing if we know that every minute several hours of contents are uploaded only on YouTube? So if you filter all the chat GP, what will you have at the end? This is something that Italy tried to. But in my opinion, we should rather promote good contents. We do not select educational, scientific contents, and we don't promote that. This is where America and Europe differ. They do have problems with some contents, but they're trying to deal with these problems differently. They try to deal with gateways. And these gateways are the ones that should introduce some sort of regulation. But this is actually geopolitics. And now we're talking about filtering of contents. Okay, you've mentioned different approaches of contents control, but what are the global approaches? You've mentioned Europe and America, but they're not the only ones who have different approaches. Yes, we know that China has its great firewall, and actually they were able to cut off some services. You all know the story about Google. So if Google wants to operate in their part of the world, Google needs to actually respect their rules. There are some services that impose the structure of the contents. In the States, the freedom of speech is limitless. But interestingly, big countries like China, Russia, even Nigeria, they have a great economic power. They have perhaps a small and low purchase power, but they are very big. Nigeria has 100 million inhabitants. They are able to introduce the global story without cutting off contents. In Africa, in Iran, you have all sorts of services that are completely cut off. Why? Because of the fear of the revolution. This is why they're controlling the media contents in their respective countries. I would like to hear now Željko and Danko.
First of all, I want to say that I agree with everything that Vlada said, is that different countries have different approaches. And this, well, depends on their economic power. And then we are talking about geopolitics and what is geopolitics. Geopolitics, first of all, is trying to regulate power and extension of power. It also concerns the limits or frontiers, international borders. And this is very important. In that context, we should be looking at our country, our size, our strength, the size of our market, in order to touch upon digital sovereignty topic, or later about the types of it. As Vladimir said, China is a huge market, can afford perhaps to block some content, and we know that it also censors content. We cannot watch BBC or read the Times, or it can perhaps, they can have their own Twitter, replace social networks. Yes, in terms of how a national domain maintenance system differs, the infrastructure, the big Chinese firewall. But other countries, as we said, are also trying to filter other content, cultural, religious. But this is all, as we know, doomed to fail because the domain name system, DNS, if you use any of global resolvers, such as Quad 9, etc., you will access to any content. So in this information era, it's very interesting to avoid such censorship, to avoid excessive protection of content, which leads to a general state of non-information, so to speak, or disinformation. And we have other technological possibilities, such as DNS through the HTTP protocol. Yes, we are speaking about resiliency of the internet. So if you have a global internet, which is a single network of more 75,000 international operators, there is a possibility to have end-to-end encryption. So that means that the content is protected. If you are trying to disassociate in a way, you don't have the possibility for end-to-end encryption to provide for content not being skipped in a way or avoided, that information are open or manipulated. This is one of the most important things that at least the technological community does. Also, global system maintenance, such as IP addresses and domains, that it should all work in coordination of all players. The state cannot be the only one deciding. And our country, at this moment, when it comes to this massacre that happened, this tragedy of the whole society, it made a task force. We'll see what it will, propose in a month. Danko, how does this big global approaches seem to you? And maybe you can see some consequences. When will they clash? Des and Vlada told you about the global stakeholders and technical possibilities. I want to go back to your question. The tragical shootings that happened in Serbia are a shock for the whole society. And in that shock, naturally, we are all trying to find simple solutions. However, the situation is very complex. Not only the situation of the internet, but in society as a whole. It seems to me that pointing to the internet as one of the main problems at root of such behavior is trying to find a simple solution. The situation in society is complex. We are living in a country that, has failed to face what happened in the last couple of decades in the media landscape that we live in. And now, internet had fingers pointed at it. But if we look at the whole world, the situation remains complex. The shock that happened here happened to the whole world with the global pandemic, with the invasion of Russia on Ukraine. So these are things that are without precedent, unheard of. Of course, we are concerned, but everybody around the world is concerned. I had a meeting in the EU, and the EU is concerned for digital security of its citizens, and all that creates pressure to find solutions. How is this pressure captured within the policies of different global players? It depends on their policies. At the level of the internet and technical things, in order to look at this complex problem, we must divide the issue in several levels. Content is the reason of us using the internet, and all the problems, of course, stem from there. We should make a clear difference between platforms such as Google, Facebook, Chinese TikTok, and the internet, which is, a wealth of incredible number of information, website, etc. Many of them are useful, many are not. But, I'm a technical guy, and we are thinking in our organization about technical infrastructure for everything else. What is common mistake is when we think about simple solution, we say it's the problem of the internet. From the point of view of internet infrastructure, Facebook, Instagram, TikTok are websites. Of course, very complex technically, but practically speaking, if we look through a system of identifiers, it's a domain address where we have private infrastructure and private content. When you put something on Facebook, it's Facebook's. And this is what Vlada spoke about. It's impossible to block certain parts of content on social networks, while at the same time having social networks. And there we have again the problem of a complex system and an attempt to have simple solutions. Simple solution is to block something, but this solution blocks the freedoms. Freedom of speech, freedom of political activity, innovation. The price of blocking freedom is stopping the development of society and the economy. economy depends on free entrepreneurship and initiative. Internet was created as a technological expression of free ideas of association through free association of academic networks, the companies and the users that wanted to get access. We are all online because we want to be there due to the content that we find useful. And the idea to block it is an idea of some kind of top-down approach to control. This IGF forum in Serbia is a great place to, well, participate in this global discussion because certain conclusions that we can make, we should convey them to the IGF Secretariat. Chengatai was virtually present, and he knows for the, of course, the IGF event in Serbia, and our conclusions of this meeting should be conveyed further as to what we find important in this huge dilemma and how to get things better for the economy, citizens, and everything else. Okay?
Okay, Vlada, so can you see that these different approaches to regulation may cause some conflicts or the fragmentation or any other effects? Yes, there's the element that Desiree mentioned, and this is the fight for sovereignty that did not exist to that extent. We did have countries like Iran, China, Russia that always had a tendency and were inclined towards sovereignty, but on the other hand, we had Europe and America that de facto controlled it. We do have different philosophies. I don't like these divisions, but the East was afraid of the Western influence coming through the media and social networks, and therefore it wanted to defend itself. And then we had West that actually used it in order to culturally influence the rest of the world. The elementary respect for human rights permeates the entire system. We can be ironic in concrete examples, but it is something that is the very basis of everything. On the global East, this is not as important. The control is way more important. And we can say that on the third place, we have the so-called non-aligned countries, the Balkans, Africa, and these are the countries that are not quite sure what they can do, where their values are, what can their influence be, and how much they can control their societies. This is also reflected in misinformation. This reflects in cybersecurity, in economy, and in all these aspects. If we look at the sovereignty that might be technologically achieved with all the mentioned risks, the alternative could be global negotiations. Global negotiations mean that you can influence not only Russia, China, and America, but also on global companies such as Facebook, Microsoft, etc., etc. I think that Serbia's GDP equals the one of TikTok, let alone Amazon and other bigger companies. Small countries do not have much choice. We tried to do something with Apple and Google. We wanted to be on the map. We wanted to have PayPal activated. Oh, no, you're Serbia. Oh, you're Serbia. Okay, you are ranked 160. We'll get to you in 4 years. If we want to remove problematic contents, these contents might not be illegal elsewhere. For instance, gambling or pornography. We need to be aware of cultural differences. So perhaps you come to someone from Facebook and you say that you want to eliminate some information, and then they ask you, what exactly do you want to do? And then they say, okay, you're too small, come back in 5 years. So what can we do? We can either go to the EU or to Russia and China. We do not have much choice. I don't think there's a third path. I find it very interesting to share the Danish example with you. In Silicon Valley, they have a tech ambassador. No, not just Denmark. I think that there are 10 or 15. Even the EU has its own ambassador in the Silicon Valley, and we do not have at all a cyber ambassador anywhere in the world. So now I'm trying to put myself into the position of social networks, Twitter, Facebook, TikTok, that keep getting these requests. Twitter needed to forbid some contents in Turkey, but these contents are globally still visible. So how do they fight? Željka or someone else, could you please say something? Yes, how big companies deal with it? Well, it's very important to say that the approach to contents is very complex, as Danko has already said. It's not just one server with 1.5 billion users. So dealing with contents is very complex and cannot be easily singled out. You cannot single out one content. You cannot say all those wearing blue scarves cannot access internet anymore. You do know that there's a segregation of different groups when it comes to gender. Different countries have different laws, and global social networks should please all individual requests, even though there are no legal grounds for such requests, that these might be just different requests from different countries.
This is a tricky situation, but I want to contest that they are really powerful. And, well, this is what many know, and we have seen that a democracy can collapse when you have so much disinformation on Facebook and maybe on TikTok now. Many more subtle messages that the users, well, can see and to have their opinions changed, and that democracy disappears. So the question now is, who should regulate this network and how? Vlada said that the EU is trying to bring social networks and these tech giants to put some order with them when it comes to content, because economically speaking, they're maybe too soft towards certain content that it shouldn't allow. But, well, I just want to show the complexity and the powerlessness, and to ask for, so to speak, filtration of or banning content on some rigid infrastructure reasons is wrong. Well, switch off the server or remove a domain, this is really as if you were trying with a hammer to kill an ant. And so it is very important for all regulation to be meaningful at this level of separation part, which is legally relevant for such regulations, and be aware that there are no perfect solutions, of course. Yes, this is number one. Well, the fact that when you face such things, one of the very important factors is transparency. And so different social networks approach this matter in different ways. Some are more transparent when it comes to requests that they receive. But we have examples of the influence of sanctions of some infrastructure operators, such as RIPE, that are trying to fighting it in a way. And one of the important ways how it's done, it's transparency. So maybe you and Danko could say something more. What's the aspect of international organizations which manage the lowest level of the internet infrastructure? One of the first principles of managing internet resources, such as identifiers, meaning domains or IP addresses, is neutrality. And we have seen that on this lamentable example where the Prime Minister of Ukraine asked ICC to remove Russian service, switch off the domains. They wrote to ICANN also. It didn't happen, of course. Yes, because what matters is for us to maintain the internet network that is global. Otherwise, there is no value. If you have only internet, only in Serbia or Belgrade-based internet, we simply cannot do it. So it didn't happen that RIPE NCC accepted such request, and they explained to the minister why, for which reason it is out of the question to switch off the servers in Moscow, or to switch off the servers in St. Petersburg, or to remove the RU domain from the internet network. Neutrality is what keeps internet global, so that international players can, use the infrastructure which is there for everybody. Danko, you are receiving these emails, and they're, sent to the ICANN managing board. Yes, this is an important moment. I had the opportunity to directly vote about the initiative to remove .ru from internet. Of course, ICANN didn't do it. Let us not go into potential technical situations to try to do it, because the internet is so redundant and distributed across the world, so things cannot be shut down just like that. But in any case, it is clear, this policy that one internet for one world, and that it's defined with a common system of internet identifiers, IP addresses, and domain names, which are global and unique for the whole world, and serve the whole world. And in that sense, a specific domain cannot be shut down, or an IP address, for political reasons. So this is the simple way to put it. I have perhaps more lead in understanding of this request, but it's impossible. But the fact that when you look at a global situation in countries, the job of politicians in any country is to react and to decide. And the natural reaction is that in complex situation, you want to find regulation. Finding a way to deal with something. What is now the situation, what is now happening around the world, a trend that we have noticed, is the EU is trying to emulate the models of introducing regulations in internet, in big corporations, etc. My personal impression, through several global IGFs, I participated globally as a member of a multi-stakeholder groups organizing global IGF, is that this process is quite advanced in the EU because of their perception that technologically they cannot compete with the US. So the EU said, if we cannot lead, we will tax and regulate. And so this is, well, a direct quotation of Emmanuel Macron in 2019, and we see it's happening. The problem is if you regulate, we are stopping innovation, free flow of ideas, and economically you are giving up the race. What the EU can do, and as Vlada said, with its size and importance as a major world market, small countries cannot. So if we try to do it, we will put iron wall around us, as it is happening with Russia, an iron curtain, and this will leave us with the situation we have to pay the price. We are mentioning digital sovereignty as a concept. As well, digital marketing does not exist because it's part of marketing. Digital sovereignty is part of sovereignty in the online space. It's a product of society that has a price. If you want to be sovereign, you must pay. So a country that wants to be independent and sovereign will pay this with, well, a lower standard of living of their citizens or poor economy, the impossibility of this economy to be part of the global world. So emerging countries that insist on sovereignty are closing themselves up, putting themselves in a situation where they cannot advance. Vlada said we must decide where we want to go. As a citizen of this country, I think that we are on the EU path. We are a candidate. We are accepting all European processes. So it is a topic that we should talk about. IGF is a great place for discussion. But as a citizens, I think that we already made our mind. This is the path that's clear. Well, the speed of this path is, well, of course, questionable.
Vlada, we heard something about different approaches and even something about different legal frameworks in different parts of the world. But what is the reality is that despite of it all, we still have a functioning internet, which is a global network. In some spaces, it is more restricted, but in some other, we are still gathered. Is there some sort of convergence in this space? It's a great question. Everything is great, but how can we regulate it? Let me just say something about what Darko said. I think that the initial premise that the digital world does not exist anymore is real. All the phenomena of the digital existence are completely blended to our real lives. If we talk about safety, if we talk about economy, if we talk about everything, if the balance is not well done, everything will fall apart, because nowadays we cannot regulate internet like we were able to regulate the world in the era before internet. If we talk about all these other countries, the non-aligned one, there's a catch. One country cannot survive on its own, but we have many similarities between some other countries when it comes to our interests. It can be similar to Caribbean countries, let's say. By working and acting together, we might put pressure on some other countries in the other world. Some small countries do not have sufficient capacities. You were actually talking about cyber ambassadors. But if we talk about the Internet Governance Forum, it is very constructive, but it has some sort of a political hat. some sort of high-level panel that should be afterwards linked to what is discussed in the entire world. There are processes during which decisions are made in the World Trade Organization. There's a process that deals with policies linked to e-commerce that include security aspects and it is really very serious. Within the UN, we have negotiations about what can be done in case of a war. We can be talking about breaches in the international law every day. A few years back, some things were inconceivable. We are talking about the Convention on Cybercrime. The conference should be followed by a global binding instrument linked to the cyberspace. Then we have negotiations within the UN about automated weapons. Then you have all sorts of political processes in G7 last month. Ministers were talking about AI regulations. So these policies are not on the standstill anymore. Things are speeding up. And if I want to spice it up a little bit, we are talking about multi-stakeholders and about their possibilities. I will give you one example. These negotiations during the first committee of the UN, you only have states. If you talk about cyberspace, there are participants of 50 organizations that can impact the decision-making. I really like what you've just said. If we talk about how some countries are small, our country does not have sufficient capacity to deal with. We are very small. We should be looking for simple solutions. But if we create a unity of independent entities, we can do something. We are recognized by UNDP, by USAID, by different organizations. With International Telecommunication Unity, I visited Pacific Isles. I was drinking cocktail, observing whales at the beach, and someone asked me where I came from, and they asked me if I knew Slobodan Marković. We are small, but we do have capacities that we do not sufficiently use. And this is really very important. We should use this more. Okay, Desiree? Yes, Vlada said a lot of things, but one of the most important one is the multi-stakeholder internet governing. When I was the advisor of the UN, in the first consulting body that composed the IGF, when we established the most important topics for the IGF, such as access, security on internet, protection of human rights, new technologies, artificial intelligence, and so on, we actually had in mind national forums that should be dealing with the entire community, that should be included everyone, non-governmental organization, independent internet user, individuals. We need to be asked when these decisions are made, and this is the most important in these processes. I would just like to mention another process initiated by the UN. It's the Global Compact. All the countries should be invited in order to find the unique vision of the internet governance. It won't be easily done. All these leading countries won't very easily come to a consensus in 2024. These countries should agree on security problem solving, on artificial intelligence, and the entity that should actually deal with geographic attributes should be identified. So the multi-stakeholder model and system that was established in 2005 with Tunis agenda, where 193 countries agreed on this multi-stakeholder approach in dealing with internet and decision-making, can actually, in 2025, during the revision, reopened. Why? Because of some issues that have emerged in the world. We have these three internet that Macron mentioned, the American, the Chinese, and the European one. These are the issues that our community must deal with. We are all included in this problem, and we need to have a clear picture of the model that we want. Do we want only governments to decide on internet, or perhaps we want NGOs, international organizations, private sector, and individuals to participate?
Vlada stole your show, Danko, but you probably want to add something. No, this is a great opportunity to add. I think that this topic is quite essential. What Des said, when states speak between themselves, it's a multilateral model. International organizations, just as UN, are state organizations. But why is this IGF special? Because this is open towards this multi-stakeholder model, the bottom-up approach. So those that represent the users, the businesses, academia, are there and speak on equal footing. ICANN was founded on these principles with the starting idea when the United States left in initial phases the contractual management of this network to the global internet community. And so this process was called privately led initiative. It's not state-led, but it's private-led. So later it was redefined as a multi-stakeholder model. But I think that this model is very interesting to us, as Vlada said. Serbia is punching above its weight, as the US say. We have a Diplo Foundation where Jovan Kurbalija is the founder, is Vlada's boss, by the way, is recognized in the world. And we have Desiree, which is in the managing board of the World, of the Internet Society. I'm currently at the position of deputy president of the ICANN's managing board. It's an organization which is technically the coordinator of global internet. So structurally, the central technical organization online. We have people such as Slobodan from the Serbian Radunović that are recognized in many international forums, such as, for example, the Serbian organization, Radunović, as the Register of Internet Domains, one of the main founders of the Serbian IGF, technical supporter, is recognized as the leading organization, the leading national internet register in the region, because it's a technical, non-governmental organization which very successfully does this work and support the internet community. So through this multi-stakeholder model, we have the possibility to globally participate. The strength of our country in this multilateral model corresponds to our strength of our economy. So it's very low. The people that participate in the multi-stakeholder model is to help global processes due to their importance. The direct interest of the state in these models, it seems to me, isn't recognized sufficiently. So there is room for greater promotion of Serbia and recognizing, well, Serbia recognition that would bring more investments, cooperation of our economy to the global economy, etc. This is a good path as to how we can do more. So let us try now, together with the audience, to, well, try to lower this puzzle at our level. Bearing all this in mind, what can we conclude as to how we could behave, bearing in mind, among other things, that according to the report of the FSF organization, that we are one of the countries that is believed to be a country, considered to be a country of free internet, and this has not been achieved easily, and that we should safeguard or keep such reputation. But we have the situation that two task forces or working groups are formed that are to address our problems in the next month. So what should we bear in mind? What's our option? What is sensible to do? We have said a lot about what should not be done. It's difficult to say what should be done because we are small countries. But first and foremost, we have to find a way of thinking at the national level when you bring about policies. When you see our rating in many things, such as the law on information security, we have that. But the implementation is wrong or not full. For example, the way as to how we make these decisions must be more real or realistic, I fear. For example, we should look at the positive side, positive content, and not only how to block negative content. How to change society, because the internet is a mirror of society. If you don't like what you see, do not break the mirror. Change society. This is the key. The change of this society here, and when it comes to geopolitics, we boast digitalization, which is in a good situation in Serbia, but we are not following with our policy framework substantially the freedoms, what you should follow in terms of digitization, also strengthening the national, official, state competencies. Our ministry has several incredible people, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, but it is not strong enough, not supported enough to participate in the UN, the missions are small, not understaffed, etc. We must use the potential of this society, the multi-stakeholder community, which has a fantastic capacity to help the state. Whether the state will accept this, we don't know. That is why we are gathered here today. We'll send them the footage of this session. Željka? I want to say that we should not look to point fingers at the internet as some kind of culprit. It's easy. We should look at society and the problems that we have in our society, this metaphor of the mirror. Secondly, I think it's difficult to imagine that, like the US, we will have our cyber ambassador, which would be great, but we are still not there. And we have to find this place of ours as a small country. There is a whole book about small state diplomacy, how to widen our economic and political, albeit small, influences. So there are other spaces where we already function. The multi-stakeholder processes, but we must understand that the inclusion in terms of addressing certain norms that our country should adopt cannot be done behind closed doors. There are public discussions about these problems. The problems are complex, but the filtration or prohibition of access to information is not the way. Danko?
I stopped to think about Vlada's message to change the society, and somehow I don't think that I have an opinion about that. I should perhaps leave to the younger ones who grew up with internet to answer that question. These changes will come naturally. On the other hand, I think that what we as an IGF gathering can leave as a message. If we look into geopolitics, we can perhaps say that the answers are as complex as the questions and that they require transparency, understanding, discussions, that they require respect on some fundamental principle, such as individual freedoms, privacy protection, privacy of people from abuse. From that aspect, it could be perceived how to move forward. And this is at the same time a message that we can give to our policy makers and decision makers. Are there any questions? Yes, of course. Yes, so we're opening the discussion, please. Yes. Good day, Ace Mihailović. I will be very brief. I will just say a few words. What will happen with internet or with something on internet? I don't think there are any dangers, any problems, because internet was the second one accused. The first one was the West, and actually we should take into consideration the recipient of the messages. Should there any sanctions be introduced, the reasons would be completely different. Thank you. Good day. I had two questions that might be more coherent in this concrete discussion on the macro and micro levels for the next 10 years. IE will completely invalidate cryptography when all the information are accessible and when there are no possibilities to restrain that. The second one is, how can I, as a citizen, influence the implementation to access to the information and security of information in Serbia? Please. Yes, as far as the first one, if we talk about quantum future of cryptography, it is a major issue. We don't know a lot about that. Both the East and the West deal with it to a great extent. All sorts of institutions in America work on that, and they have a quantum-proof cryptography that cannot be answered by brute force. The question remained is who will be swifter. There are perhaps those who monitor it more closely. We still do not use quantum machines every day, which does not mean that China or America do not have machines that can breach cryptography. But I'm not worried about them. Even in the past, they were finding the ways to breach one another's security systems. We have a fairly centralized internet services. We have large companies, but when the society made them include end-to-end cryptography, they did it. When this is possible, they will probably do it. Probably they won't be able to do the backwards cryptography, but probably the data protected by the new cryptography won't be accessible. Also, the old data are perhaps not interesting enough for everyone. So private data without any security is not done anymore. Perhaps I'm wrong. I forgot the second question, but perhaps some of you would like to answer. Yes, I would like to say something. Yes, we actually shifted our answer to the post-quantum cryptography. If you're interested in that from the technical point of view, there's the Octo Office of the ECO of the Internet. You can see all the technical details published. One of them is the analysis of the state of post-quantum algorithms, which are crucial for the stability of Internet. And also we have the secure signing of the domains in the central root zone that we govern, and it is really vital for the internet security. And the conclusions are similar to what Vlada said.
When it comes to the question how to participate, we have a twofold answer. You can personally participate in many ways. Thank you for participating here. Secondly, you can act globally on the global IGF as an individual. ICANN as an organization is a bottom-up multi-stakeholder. You have representatives of businesses, protection of intellectual property, of representatives of private users, telecom operators, included in this structured debate about things. ISOC, for example, a great place for discussion about political places. If we really want for these discussions to be strong, you need to organize. For example, as in political processes, you need political parties representing certain ideas in the parliament. This is a sense of democracy. In these processes of internet management is stronger when people with similar concepts are organized. For example, you have Andrea Bacali at the beginning invited to participate in open ICANN meetings. There will be one in Europe. There are certain support programs for traveling for people that are interested. There is also room. One of the great places for information is the website of the Serbian Register of Internet Domains, a bottom-up organization which is non-profit, which works in order to help the internet community, organizing meetings such as this one. So I would agree what has been already said. There are many possibilities. It is important to know that nothing is given. Everything you want, you must organize and ask. The Internet Society of Serbia is also into application of new technologies and also different things that, well, are related to internet policy. So you can join us on our regional level and also on the global level. There are many organizations. RIPE ICC also has a network of of scholars. They have different fellowships. The next meeting is in May. Many people from Belgrade are coming. So there are initiatives where you can, of course, join. And it is important to do this here also, not only internationally. In this discussion that is initiated about the control of harmful content online, I haven't seen any public discussion in Serbia. I'm looking at weeklies daily newspapers, on TV. On TV, there is nothing apart from the decisions about the working group or task force. I would have expected a more meaningful discussion. This is a good opportunity for all of you. Maybe you haven't participated national IGF. We need young people. If you are disposed, maybe you can help the organization to think about the topics of IGF. We want to recruit people to have such discussions the whole year. You are welcome. Radunović is a very good contact point to assemble people that want to invest themselves. Okay, so another question, Nicola, before wrapping up. At the direct question, how to manage the internet, I think that here from this meeting, we should send a message that will say, resist a stronger internet regulation. In the world, international developments and our situation here goes towards strengthening regulation. But from here, this meeting, we should send a message that we should counter this. Last week, I participated in the roundtable on the topic of internet misuse. And we defined what should be done in order for eliminate such misconduct online. So state authorities should have stronger monitoring. RAM should do its part of the work, providers their part of the work. But we concluded that we must counter this general request. I don't want to mention any names, but in Serbia we already have several important public figures that have called for regulation or have a ban 3 months or 6 months of this or that social network. We should not support it, and the right thing is to strengthen social and professional critique of the content online. We have very few results. However, the media and the internet must contribute to strengthen and develop the awareness as to what is in the internet, what is, well, convenient for the internet, what is improper, etc. Thank you. This is a perfect conclusion. And thank you very much. An applause for everybody.